Penn State fans, good afternoon. Welcome to the Blue White Breakdown. Here on Penn Live, I'm Max Ralph. That's Johnny McGonigal. It's another live Blue White Breakdown here on a Thursday afternoon. And Johnny, where else would you want to be? We've got a battle for the ages this weekend in Michigan State. Both teams, Penn State and the Spartans, coming in on 6-game losing streaks, and neither one of them has a Big Ten win just yet. Penn State came dangerously close to one last weekend against a really good Indiana football team. It took a 2-minute drive, marching 85 yards down the field from a Heisman hopeful in Fernando Mendoza, with two of just like the best catches that you're going to see this season from Omar Cooper and Charlie Becker. Like, it was a Herculean effort for Indiana to still win that game. Penn State played really well. It's tough to swallow another loss if you're the Nittany Lions, but at least the schedule seems to open up this weekend with Michigan State potentially making a quarterback change. They did last time out, and now it's maybe, we don't really know what's going on there. But Johnny, a lot of intrigue. Let's check in with you. How we feeling, and what's sticking out to you as you have kind of gone through this week thinking about that Indiana loss?
Yeah, Max, first of all, good to be back. I missed you guys last week. Missed the chat, missed the Blue White Breakdown. Right. With the Eagles having a Monday night game, it kind of threw the media schedule out of whack, and I had to be down at NovaCare last Thursday. So, but I listened to the show. You and Bob did a great job, as well as Monday too, breaking down everything Indiana, and we don't have to spend too much time relitigating that. But just like my thoughts on it. I was down there on the field for the final 5 minutes. Me and a few other writers were right in line on the line of scrimmage for that last play, that touchdown to Omar Cooper. And I can understand why fans in the stands didn't know, like, if he got the foot down, because the angles that we were getting on the video board, like, it looked like that first foot might have hit out of bounds first. And that's what I was convinced had happened. Really, it was like, kind of like, there's no way he caught that. There's just no way, right? And then obviously, looking back at replays and stuff, one of the best catches, not only of the year, but like in recent college football memory. Like, you go back to the Michael Crabtree catch for Texas Tech against Texas. Like, it was one of those moments, especially if Indiana goes on and makes a deep CFP run. They probably would have made the CFP anyway, but they have a real chance of getting a first-round bye, even if they lose to Ohio State, the Big Ten title game. That was a huge play. And, I mean, if Fernando Mendoza goes on and wins the Heisman, that's a Heisman moment, because the guy got clocked. The guy got clocked by two Penn Staters, and he still put it where only Omar Cooper could go up and make the most ridiculous catch we've seen this year. So, and on the Penn State side of it, just like a really heartbreaking result, right? Like, this is a group that – talking to Nick Dawkins after the game, he was saying, like, it's kind of like what do we need to do? Like, what the hell do we need to do to get a win here?
Right.
Because they've come so close. So many games have been decided. Obviously, the Ohio State game wasn't, but, Oregon in double overtime and Northwestern by a point. They rally back against UCLA, a point out at Iowa, and then it's just, It really, I mean, it sucks for those guys. Like, point blank, it just sucks for this team, because they've come so close now, and they haven't won since the Villanova game, which is coming up on this weekend. 2 months.
2 months. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah. 2 months. I mean, it feels like longer too, because it feels like however long ago it's been since James Franklin got fired and everything. It's been a long, arduous season for this team, and obviously a lot of the younger guys will have decisions to make on whether or not they're coming back to this program. But I feel really bad for, like, the older guys. Like, Nick Singleton had a phenomenal game. He finally breaks out and shows that he's Nick Singleton of old, right? And in the end, it's in a loss. So I feel for those guys. Like, it was an emotional kind of, just emotional in that, like, there wasn't much emotion. It was like despair almost. It was just like, God, like, what do we need to do here to get a win? And so, it was a tough locker room, they told us it was a tough locker room. It was a tough media session in Beaver Stadium after the game, but they've got an opportunity this weekend against Michigan State. They've got an opportunity against Nebraska without Dylan Raiola. They've got an opportunity against Rutgers. Like, I think this team's goal is just to, like, get in the win column at this point, like, get Terry Smith a win. These seniors, they don't want to end their Penn State career without it. I mean, going winless in Big Ten play would be brutal. So, it starts with just getting one and trying to stack it.
Yeah, it's just you're right. It is exactly like, what the hell do they have to do? Because even on that last drive, like the 2 catches that Becker and Cooper made, what do you ask Audavian Collins and Zachy Wheatley to do differently there? Like they're playing them in the air, like they don't have a play on the ball, but they're shoving them out of bounds, and somehow those guys just get a foot down. I mean, they're getting another hit on Fernando Mendoza. It's like they did a lot of good things. I mean, sure, they played a little soft moving through the field on that drive, but it's just that Indiana made the plays. The breaks didn't go Penn State's way once again. And here we are. I like that you mentioned the young guys all are going to have a decision to make. One of the young guys that was really impressive in that game that Bob and I talked pretty in depth about on Monday is Ethan Grunkemeyer, the quarterback. And we got the chance to talk to him this week on Tuesday. And he was asked, like, how important is it that, like, you're kind of auditioning right now, whether it's here or somewhere else? And would you want that to be here? And he basically said, like, yeah, if given the right opportunity, I'd absolutely like to be here. I love Penn State and everything that it stands for. And then we were talking to King Mack, who made an interception against Indiana, has played some pretty good football in that safety room last night at practice. And he basically said the same thing. Like, he's been such a big proponent of, like, I came back here for a reason, because he started at Penn State, went to Alabama, came back, and he's been a great voice for that locker room. And he said, yeah, like, I love Penn State. I love Jim Knowles' defense. If he's still here, I think we've started to figure it out, which is very apparent in the way they played. And he said a lot of good things about how they got to doing that. And it's interesting. I mean, it's not like you're going to see all 125 players enter the portal, but there are going to be a lot that go. And I think the large majority of the Penn State fan base has kind of gotten to the point where you realize, okay, yeah, so as soon as they hit that 3-game losing streak and James Franklin was fired, the season was over. But it's good to see some guys playing hard. They want to get Terry a win. And it's also important, like, for these guys to audition for their next stop, whether it's at Penn State, whether it's at the NFL, whether it's in the transfer portal. There's still a lot to play for, especially for the pride of Terry Smith, as you said, a guy who's done a really commendable job. And this weekend it could break. The dam could finally break this weekend.
Yeah. Building off the point that you made about, younger players and what King Mack said and what Ethan said, and surely what a lot of these freshmen, redshirt freshmen, sophomores are thinking of right now. Especially the freshmen, like the people, the guys who just got to Penn State. This is their first year, with the Nittany Lions. They saw all the success, the CFP semifinal run last year, and they were excited to come into a team with national title expectations. And this is been their experience so far at Penn State. Talking to Nick Singleton after the game, he was asked about kind of like, what's your message to these guys? And I asked him about leadership and how much that matters to him, especially down the stretch, given what this team has already gone through and given that he is on his way out the door. He is one of many players who, will get drafted, will be in the NFL this time next year. And he said, look, I'm telling these young guys about my experience at Penn State. It's been unbelievable. The 4 years he has had at Penn State. It's not just this year. Obviously, they're going out on a sour note, but you look at the success that they've had over the previous 3 seasons that Nick and Katron, Denai, all those guys have had. That's what Penn State is to them, and the experiences that they've had. So it's good in a sense that, obviously coming into the year, you wanted all these seniors back to fuel a title run, but now to have them in the room, in the Lash building, position groups, team meetings, to be able to tell these younger players, like, this too shall pass. Like, this is not what Penn State football is or has been, in my experience. And so I think that's valuable going forward. Now, at the same time too, they've got personal relationships with their teammates, with these younger guys. So they're not going to say, like, hey, if a really good opportunity in the portal opens up, don't take it, because,
right,
they're getting paid. Like Nick and Kate, all these guys are getting paid too to be at Penn State. So they understand there's a business side of this. So they're not going to, like, advise them negligibly. They're going to be real with them. But Penn State's not like just some crappy program. Like obviously they're going to go out and hire a good coach. Who that is, we don't know yet. There's a lot of names flying around. We can talk about that in a second, but they're going to hire someone that is good. And, it is a good program. You're playing in the Big Ten. They are less than a year removed from a CFP run. So there's a lot to play for now and in the future if you're at Penn State.
Yeah, there absolutely is. You said this too shall pass. Terry Smith has been kind of a bank of anecdotes ever since he became the head coach, and the one he gave us last night.
I felt like one of the idiom books you find at like the Scholastic Fair that just pulling that one out.
I know he keeps talking about the storms and like we're in this storm. We just got to see the other side of it. He pulled out another good one at practice last night, and I spent all my time after practice with King Mac, and he was talking about it too. But he says, if you think about a pencil sharpener, and you put your classic number 2 yellow pencil with a pink eraser in there, and you're turning it and you're pulling the wood shavings back, and it's getting there to get ready to write. But if you pull it out too early, it won't be able to write. And he said that was us last weekend. We did so many good things. We pulled back so many wood chips. Like we threw the ball downfield. We played better defense, and we still were just a little too early, and the pencil wasn't ready yet. So he said, all right, we're going to be sharp this week. We're going to be ready to write at Michigan State. And I asked King Mac, like, how does that resonate with you guys? And he said, well, Terry gave each and every one of us a pencil that we're holding in our locker rooms now. So that was pretty fun. I mean,
it's probably the first time a lot of those guys have held like an actual pencil and not a mechanical pencil.
People were talking about that last night because I clarified with him. I was like, are we talking like a yellow pencil, pink eraser and everything? He said, yeah, like one of those number 2s. So
we're talking the Ticonderoga Classic.
That's right. The classic. The only thing, like, I think most of them probably have taken state tests with pencils and Scantrons, but I don't know, because even as shortly removed from high school as I am, I think the standardized testing scene has changed quite a bit. But
yeah.
But Terry's funny, man, and I think it's just another example of everybody's kind of got the right mindset going through all of this. These guys really do want to win the game this weekend. I mean, that seems like a stupid statement, but I think they're focused. Like this matters to them. I still think like I'd be really curious if they can run the table to end the year, if they'd play in a bowl game, or the dynamics at play there. But it's an interesting one, Johnny. I think now's a good time though to shift gears a little bit and maybe talk about some coaching search. We don't have a ton of updates, and I think that's another key thing that we want to just like remind everybody is not a lot's going to happen until the season is over, or at least the season's almost over. Concrete interviews, rumors, buzz, things of that nature, probably still a couple weeks away. And then you'll see a flurry right after the season ends. There's some wait and see with how the CFP plays out. A lot of stuff going on. But you had some interesting stuff. We were talking off air before we got here. James Franklin, man, where's he going to go? And like, there's a lot on the table there. And I know that you've got a story coming out this week, a column. You're labeling it an oddly specific prediction for the coaching search, and considering how good of a pulse you have on all of college football and following all this stuff, I'm very excited to read it. So why don't you give me what's on your mind right now, so, especially since you weren't here on the live show last week.
Yeah, so we'll start with Penn State. First of all, you're 100% right. Like this thing still has legs. This is still going to take a little bit of time. The names that you've heard are the names that are still out there. The Mike Elkos, the Caitlin DeBoers, maybe even the Marcus Freemans. Like, Pat Kraft is still going to take those big swings. Like whether or not Penn State lands them, like how likely that is, he's still going to take those big swings. He's going to make them say no, not just once, not just twice. And obviously the CFP timeline has a lot to do with whether or not, along with like whether or not those guys want to come to State College, would have a lot to do with if they are actually going to be Penn State's next head coach. And, Notre Dame, if they win this weekend against Pitt, they got an easy next 2 games after that. They're in the field. Game day in at Acrisure Stadium. So interested to see
pretty crazy.
Yeah. Game day never came to Pitt when I was covering them during the ACC title year, which I was kind of surprised by. But first time in a long time for the folks across the state there. But Elko and DeBoer, I mean, both of those teams look like they are CFP ready. Both of them are in pole position to play each other in the SEC championship game. Again, I mean, A&M plays Texas, but I even if at 11-1, they're still getting the CFP. So the timeline stuff doesn't look great for Penn State on that front. The one minor update, if there's anything, and I know you mentioned this in your hot, cold, warm kind of weekly update, was the fact that Mizzou lost again. And without Bo Prabula, for what we believe is the remainder of the season, Mizzou is even at 9-3, probably not going to get in. But they are effectively out of the CFP race, which it's one of those fine lines. You don't want them to totally tank and then have Eli Drinkowitz be kind of an unsellable candidate. But at the same time, you want them to be not good enough to make the CFP and make him available for an earlier hire. And he's a guy who is going to garner interest not only at Penn State, but Auburn, Florida, LSU, teams in the South, even Arkansas, maybe. I don't think he would take that job, but I'm sure they've already made the call. That's a name that I'm keeping an eye on. And for my oddly specific coaching carousel, predictions, which again, those are on vibes and vibes alone. That's not I don't have sources down in Gainesville that's giving me what they're going to do, or if they're going to land Lane Kiffin, all that. It's vibes and vibes alone. But I might be having one Mizzou coach go and bring a quarterback or two with him to Happy Valley. Let's put it that way.
I like it. Listen, I think obviously I don't have any stake in any of this because we are reporters, but I'm rooting for chaos, man. How hilarious and just kind of cool would it be that Bo Prabula could come back to Penn State and be the starter? And I mean, also Matt Zollers, who is a PA guy, Drinkwitz has come into Pennsylvania and recruited the state pretty well for being in, the SEC and a school that really has no business recruiting Pennsylvania well. And it'd be interesting. As far as chaos goes, how about James winding up at Maryland in place of a fired Mike Loxley, huh? It's not going to happen.
That will never happen. James Franklin will never, even if it's, I'm pretty sure it's a different president and different everything there. After everything that happened with him being coach in waiting and then getting the rug pulled out from under him in that scenario, I don't think he will. No, that will never happen. I've got James going to the SEC, even though I know that there's smoke around Virginia Tech. There has been for a couple of weeks now. I think I saw a report from Arkansas's On3 site that James is the top target, or if not the top target, among the top targets for Arkansas, which would be a big swing for the Razorbacks, and that's an athletic department that plucked away John Calipari to run their men's basketball program. Right. So they are known to make a big swing. I think the funniest thing in the world and the dumbest thing in the world would be Arkansas just keeping Bobby Petrino. That's what I'm kind of rooting for, just in terms of the chaos and the stupidity that is this coaching carousel. It's nutty. But yeah, I've got James landing in the SEC. I think Auburn could do with the James Franklin. First and foremost, Hugh Freeze reportedly was out golfing the day after losses, and that rubbed people the wrong way down at Auburn. James Franklin does not golf, so Auburn fans don't have to worry about that. They would also be getting a program builder who knows how to win 9-10 games a year and bring a level of respectability and normalcy, to a program. So I could see that being a fit. But yeah, a lot of interesting stuff. I got that's coming out online, Friday morning, tomorrow morning, depending on when you're listening to this. So keep an eye out for that. I'm pretty much done. I've had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing, I saw there was a report that Jeff Brom may be finalizing an extension at Louisville, which that's a guy who had some traction online, at least for Penn State. It's a guy who did some good stuff at Purdue, maybe doesn't have the long track record of program building, but he's definitely got signature wins. And that's something Penn State hasn't had in a while and would be interesting. Johnny, I'm going to throw a wild card at you. I'm not reporting anything by any means. Like I said, I'm here for the chaos. But Brian Dable, I mean, he's a free agent now, and he's got a Penn State tie.
Yeah, he was wearing a Penn State hoodie.
He
First
was.
picture. Yeah, that's because I think his son was an equipment assistant or like a lower level
Yeah.
coaching assistant. I remember there was a game a couple years ago where Daboll was like on the sideline for a Penn State game, and that's why his son has a connection to Penn State. So I know a lot of people on Twitter started freaking out about that. Even I think AQ Shipley, former Penn State center, was talking about Daboll on the McAfee show yesterday. No, I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening. But I think overall I understand the want from a Penn State fan standpoint, not necessarily wanting Brian Daboll, but wanting someone who, and this is kind of where Brom falls in the mix here too, like an offensive mind who knows how to work with quarterbacks and knows how to develop receivers. You look at Chris Bell, what he's doing at Louisville right now. You look at, what Brom had in Rondale Moore at Purdue. I know those are just a couple of examples, and there are a lot of other coaches out there that fit that mold and fit that bill. But yeah, it was just really funny timing seeing the Daboll picture, surface, and then everyone collectively lose their minds for about 4 minutes.
I know. And then it's like, everybody's like, well, hold on. His son went to Penn State. Like, calm down. Yeah. It's pretty funny. Look, he did win a national championship as the OC at Alabama. So
he did.
Look, I'm just saying, I don't think anyone really is completely ruled out is it. Let's get to the game that we are covering this weekend, Johnny. Penn State, Michigan State. As a reminder, this is the live version of the Blue White Breakdown. If you have a question, a comment you'd like us to address, leave it in the chat. We will get to it if we can. But Johnny, Penn State goes up to Michigan State to East Lansing this weekend. I will be there alongside Joe Hermit, our photographer. You and Bob will be remote, but it's an interesting one. Both teams 3-6, 6-game losing streaks. Neither team has won since September 13th, 2 months, and no Big Ten wins so far. It is a battle of two completely different stories, though, because Michigan State has a second-year head coach that is on the hot seat. There's some interesting QB turmoil in East Lansing. Aiden Childs started the year out as the starter, and then I don't know that I should even try to say his name, but they turned to Alessio Milivojevic. Is that his name? It's a tongue twister. I got to be honest. But he put up 300 yards in their last loss against Minnesota. We don't know exactly who's going to go out there this weekend, but the Michigan State defense has really struggled this year. One of the worst in the nation in allowing points. And Penn State is on the upswing right now, playing better football. So, Johnny, what stands out to you in this matchup?
What stands out to me is that my preseason prediction of Purdue not finishing last in the Big Ten kind of rides on Michigan State losing out and Purdue picking up a win against either Washington or Indiana, which does not look likely whatsoever. But the fact that before the year, I kind of thought Michigan State, not that they would be winless at this point, but that they would be kind of in this position. Just things have not gone right under Jonathan Smith so far. That's another one where, just as a teaser for the coaching carousel predictions, I could see a split there, kind of a mutual deal, and Michigan State going after a former Big Ten coach who has been since cleared of any wrongdoing in a potential scandal that happened in the Big Ten. One Pat Fitzgerald. I think Pat Fitzgerald at Michigan State would fit perfectly, honestly. Mm-hmm. But that is a complete side conversation. This game, Michigan State is not very good. Penn State took the number 2 team in the country down to the wire. They've been in games against, Iowa. Obviously they were in a game against Oregon before the wheels fell off. I think Penn State is just more talented than this team. I think, Michigan State's offensive line is not very good at all. I think they rank 120th, 121st in the country in sacks allowed. They've allowed 30 sacks so far this season. And Penn State's defensive front is coming off a game in which they sacked Mendoza 3 times, and they hit him time and time and time again, as we saw even on that final drive in that game. So I think this is a game where Deni Dennis Sutton can kind of pin his ears back. And I know that that's almost been an issue at times where he's just getting too far upfield. But, him, Zane Durant, I think even blitzing Amari Campbell, getting after the quarterback. I think this is a game where Penn State's defense can kind of put the stranglehold on me, just because I don't think Michigan State has much of anything. They don't have a Nico Iamaleava or a Mark Granowski who, can really hurt you. I don't think, at least, depending on who the quarterback is. But I think Michigan State's offensive line is going to be the worst unit in this game, and Penn State can be able to take advantage.
Yeah, I think the Michigan State secondary is really struggling too. They give up a huge completion rate. And with how well Ethan Grunkemeyer stepped forward in the Indiana game, I think there's no reason for Penn State to not come out and be slinging it right away. And it could really make a huge difference. Michigan State does have some talented skill guys, even though they've struggled. Nick Marsh, a wide receiver, really good player who, is as Terry Smith said, it feels like every week we're playing against elite wide receivers. So they'll have their hands full with a guy like that. He's had a good season. The running back Mekhi Frazier is averaging over 4 yards a carry. Decent player. I don't know that it's going to be like a blowout. We're talking, okay, yeah, Penn State's a more talented team. I absolutely agree, because if you take out the UCLA and Northwestern games where the team was clearly just, you can't take those out, right? But the team was lost. Like let's be honest. Let's call it what it is. James Franklin got fired for a reason, and the team was not playing as they should in either of those games. The Iowa game against a good Iowa team in a tough environment, lost by 1 point. And then Ohio State is the number 1 team in the country for a lot of reasons. You lose that one, but then you take number 2 Indiana down to the wire again. I think Penn State should be, as they are, favored in this game. And I think that there are a lot of reasons that Penn State can exploit this team right now. So let's get into our predictions. I'll go and share Joe Hermit's right now, our photographer extraordinaire. He goes with Ethan Grunkemeyer on the spot for his players on the spot. Grunk's had a 3-game murderer's row of Iowa, Ohio State, and Indiana. This week is much different against one of the worst defenses in the nation. Should be able to feed off of it. Don't be surprised if Penn State racks up 200 rushing yards. Yushing yards. There you go. I don't know why I had such a hard time with that. Katron Allen bouncing back after a tough game against the Hoosiers. Look, he says, and he's right, you got to wonder how many gut punches Penn State can take after losing Aller to injury. Head coach fired, 6 losses. Be really easy to fold it in, but they haven't yet. Terry Smith keeps them fighting, and he thinks they're going to get their first win. Penn State 31, Michigan State 20. Bob Flounders, not on the podcast today, but always a presence. His players on the spot are Katron Allen, held in check by Indiana's defense last week, should go for 100 plus against Michigan State's suspect defense. And here's a little tidbit. He says he needs to get 20 or more carries, but we'll see if that happens, because Nick Singleton kind of broke out again last weekend. Bob's don't be surprised if another bold prediction for Bob. True freshman wideout Kobe Howard scores his first career touchdown. He's clearly earned the trust of Penn State quarterback Ethan Grunkemeyer, and Howard is good in space. Nothing's been easy for the Lions, he says, in 2025. Why should Saturday be any different? He's got the Penn State Nittany Lions winning, though, 23-20. And then for my pick, before I turn it to you, Johnny, I'm going with the defensive line led by Deni Dennis Sutton and Zane Durant, who pressured Fernando Mendoza on 50% of his dropbacks. Durant himself had 7 pressures, according to PFF. Deni had 4. They just looked like a completely different unit. They blitzed more. It was more creative, a lot more aggressive. It really successful. And I think, as you mentioned, against this Michigan State team, that could be a huge difference. Don't be surprised if, I understand that this doesn't sound great, but it's a little bit of a bold prediction. I'm giving Ethan Grunkemeyer more than 200 passing yards again this week, and that's not a huge number. It's just not. But Penn State had not done it since Drew Aller got hurt, and his 219 yards last week were a season high for Penn State. So, look, the bar is a little bit lower right now, and I'm giving him the 200 yards this week. I'm bought into what Penn State showed last week. I think that this team will be the one that ends their losing streak. I think Penn State gets it. Not in a huge blowout, but fairly comfortably. I'm going Penn State 27, Michigan State 17.
Yeah, I've got a similar score. I mean, I've got Penn State 30, Michigan State 17. And I think that's one where kind of Penn State tacks one on at the end. Like, I don't see this being a massive blowout either, but I do see it as being an opportunity for Ethan Grunkemeyer, as we talked about. He's my player on the spot, and pointing out the fact that they might have found something with actually calling vertical passing plays, as the game against Indiana progressed. And now he's facing a Michigan State defense that, out of 136 FBS teams, ranks 128th in completion percentage allowed, 121st in passer rating allowed. Look, we talked about it. There's a decent chance that Grunkemeyer is back at Penn State. There's also a pretty decent chance that he's not at Penn State and that he enters the portal, goes somewhere else, depending on what happens with a new coach who may or may not want to bring in a quarterback of their own, whether that's from their old team or via the portal. So I think this is going to be a game where if Grunkemeyer is not back, it's one of those good tape games, to throw out there, be like, all right, look what this kid can do. Look how he can spin it against a pretty gettable defense. And don't be surprised if I just said, if Deni Dennis Sutton and co have another big day, I expanded on why. Look, the Penn State pass rush, 82nd in the FBS with 17 sacks, obviously not ideal or great, but Michigan State's offense has allowed 30 sacks, 7th most in the country. So even worse than what I had said previously. The pick why I'm going, like, I think Terry Smith, he has said multiple times that Penn State's in the middle of this storm, right? And Franklin was fired amid a 3-game losing streak. Then they go and they play at Iowa in a ridiculously hard and underrated environment. And then they go play on the road, against the number 1 team in the country. And then they play the number 2 team in the country. So, like, the let up, obviously they're still going to be pushing for a win, but in terms of like the level of competition, finally they get to breathe a little bit. And I think that storm calms down, and Terry gets his first win as interim head coach. Penn State gets his first win since September 13th. And ultimately pretty comfortably. Like, this isn't going to be down to a last play. I think Penn State wins by 13.
Yeah, I like it. We have a consensus that Penn State's going to win. We do not have a consensus, though, that they'll cover. I think the line is 7.5. Bob's got them only winning by 3. So 3 out of 4 say cover, but if they don't, look at Bob as the genius here. So Johnny, we got one quick question from Mike that I want to get to before we send this thing out. A fair question, I think, that I had to actually rack my brain about for a second when I read it. Are there QB rollout passes in Andy Kotelnicki's playbook? Seems like we only see stuff from the pocket. And like I said, I had to rack my brain a little bit, and I was like, well, yeah, of course. Every playbook has rollout passes because they're usually pretty easy crossers across the field and like short completions to get a quarterback in rhythm. And then I was like, oh yeah, I just finished talking about how Penn State, their highest passer this season is 219 yards. And I said, I don't think that we really have seen many rollout passes. I will say there was one that comes to mind off the top of my head from the Indiana game where Gronk had a little play action and a flare to Andrew Rappelier. It was in the 4th quarter, and I also think it was on 3rd and 10 though, and he only got like 4 yards. So
on the drive that they needed to kill the clock to win the game, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you know what? That's a very reasonable question that I did not consider.
Yeah, I can't recall many, if any. Seems like something that could work.
Yeah.
But he uses a lot of it's from what we've seen. Obviously, it's a lot of jet motion, a lot of like east-west stuff with the playmakers, not as much with the quarterback.
Right.
And I mean, it hasn't really worked all that well this year. So maybe they could implement it a little bit more.
Yeah. I think it's a good base look for a lot of playbooks. And Ethan Grunkemeyer is not a running quarterback, but the kid can move a little bit, and I think it could work. We'll see. Maybe we'll see it this weekend.
Maybe
because getting a guy in rhythm early on is something that Penn State has not done well and needs to do better.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like Terry, seemingly, it took a long time for him to get through the fact that we need to
Yeah,
throw the ball downfield.
yeah,
So unless this rollout complaint was lodged weeks ago, it maybe by the Rutgers game,
yeah,
it'll stick.
yeah. I agree. One more question at the buzzer from JC.
Yeah.
Wouldn't Katron and Nick together in the backfield create more uncertainty for defenses? Seems this package is very underutilized. Johnny, lay it on me.
Yes, but then where are you losing the number at? Are you losing a receiver and then it's obvious that you're going to run the ball? Are you losing an offensive lineman for an offensive line that, has been up and down this year? I understand that, certainly the misdirection, but at the same time, if you're, by putting both of them in the backfield, unless you're just doing straight up wildcat and taking quarterback off the field, but then you're really limiting yourself because neither of those guys can throw the ball. So I like the thought. I mean, literally just throwing stuff up against the wall. Like I don't hate it. But at the same time, I think at least in theory, why you don't do that is you lose a number somewhere. And whether it's a receiver, you lose you're more predictable. If you lose a lineman or a tight end in line, you lose a blocker.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it a little bit this year for
Yeah,
sure.
a little bit. Yeah.
But
I feel like it was more early. I feel like it was more earlier in the year though.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Unless my memory doesn't serve me well.
I would agree with that. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
have the analytics in front of me, but I would agree with that statement. And I think part of that's because early in the year they were really trying to emphasize like we're going to be a run first team, we're going to be physical. And while that's still a thing, obviously, as we said, passing offense looked quite a bit different against Indiana. But Johnny, I think that's going to do it for us here, unless you got anything else you want to add.
No, just one more thing. Is that a Wilmington Blue Rocks hat you've got on?
It is not. It is a Yokohama
Oh.
DNA Bay Stars hat.
I feel like I've asked you this before.
You might have. I like this one. I want to get a Blue Rocks hat. My girlfriend's from Delaware. I go up there pretty often, so I gotta get it. Minor league hats are awesome, and minor league team names are just awesome in general. So we got to add to the collection for sure. But this is in fact a Japanese baseball team.
I went to many a Blue Rock game in my time, in my day. Yeah. Growing up, it was only like 10, 15 minutes away. So we used to go all the time. Product of, who's a product of the Blue Rocks, because they were, I don't know what team they're affiliated with now, but they were with the Royals. It was Carlos Beltran and Mike Sweeney, two really good players.
I want to say they might be with the Rockies now.
I know. Well, that would fit. I think they went from the Nationals.
Yep.
Okay. Because I think they went Royals, Red Sox, and then I guess Nationals. I don't know. They switch hands a lot. But anyway, yeah, I just had to ask that.
Yeah.
I'm sure Penn State fans who thought, oh, they're gonna get one more thought on Penn State football, and they get me asking whether or not your hat is a Wilmington Blue Rocks hat. Sorry, folks.
The hard-hitting questions as we enter this battle for the land grant trophy, featuring two teams on 6-game losing streaks. It is just riveting stuff.
I mean, any game involving that trophy matters. Let's be honest.
Being sarcastic, but I freaking love the trophy, and
it's
I
awesome.
genuinely am very excited to go to this game because, East Lansing isn't the most well-regarded Big Ten town, but it's got some stuff. I actually kind of like the Michigan State Stadium. The last time I was there was a blizzard, so you never know what you're going to see. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, stay tuned. We're going to have a lot.
The last time I was there was a 3.5 hour lightning delay. So hopefully you don't get stuck with that.
Yeah. See, East Lansing is full of exciting stuff. So let's not discount this game this weekend by any means. I'm looking forward to it.
I hope you have no weather delays in your future.
Yeah. Well, we did have one last year in my first game on the beat for Penn Live. So
yes, we did.
It's not out of the realm of possibility. But
nope.
This has been another live edition of the Blue White Breakdown. We appreciate everybody who tuned in with us as we got a little bit off topic there at the end, but a lot of good discussion about where this team's at, some coaching search updates, and make sure you subscribe to the podcast, follow us wherever you can. Subscribe to PennLive.com. We are here throughout the end of this season for Penn State and well into the coaching search and through everything that comes